In the vast and complex landscape of human psychology, there exists a rare type of mind. It is a mind that resembles a quiet, impossibly deep ocean. On the surface, it is calm, accommodating, and endlessly empathetic. These individuals, often recognized as the quiet counselors or the deep thinkers of our society, navigate the world with a profound sensitivity to the emotions of others. They are the ones who listen when no one else will, who offer the benefit of the doubt, and who seek to find the hidden good in every soul they encounter. Because they lead with such immense compassion, a tragic misunderstanding often occurs. People mistake their quiet nature for weakness. They mistake their kindness for compliance. But beneath that gentle surface lies a fortress of absolute psychological steel. The inner world of this quiet empath is their most sacred sanctuary. It is a carefully curated gallery of thoughts, values, and profound truths. And while they leave the gates open for those who seek warmth and understanding, they are entirely unyielding when someone attempts to conquer it. History and human experience teach us that those who desire power over others are naturally drawn to the empathetic. A manipulator, a controller, or a psychological abuser will scan the room and lock eyes on the quiet listener. They see the patience, they see the willingness to forgive, and they mistakenly believe they have found a target whose mind they can easily mold. At first, the invasion is invisible. The manipulator approaches with a smile. They offer unsolicited advice. They ask probing questions masked as genuine interest, and they slowly attempt to plant seeds of doubt in the mind of the empath. They want to reshape reality. They want to dictate what is right, what is wrong, and how the empath should feel. For a fleeting moment, they might even think they are succeeding. The empath, desiring harmony, may nod, smile, and absorb the words. But what the manipulator completely fails to understand is that they have not breached the fortress. They have merely tripped the silent alarm. Deep within the core of this rare personality lies a mechanism that is both ancient and infallible. It is their intuition. Long before the logical brain can articulate exactly what is wrong, the body and the spirit already know. The first line of defense against any form of psychological control is an overwhelming, undeniable gut feeling. It might manifest as a sudden tightness in the chest, a subtle shift in the atmosphere of a room, or a quiet voice whispering in the dark. While the average person might brush this feeling aside, dismissing it as mere paranoia or overthinking, the deep thinker does not. They have spent a lifetime observing human patterns. They respect their inner voice with a reverence bordering on the spiritual. When the manipulator drops a subtle insult wrapped in a compliment, or twists a narrative to make themselves the victim, the empath feels the disruption in the air. The internal radar locks onto the threat. The quiet resistance has officially begun. Trusting this intuition is the bedrock of their survival. They do not require a grand confession or a smoking gun to know they are being manipulated. They observe the micro-expressions, the unnatural pauses in conversation, and the inconsistencies in the stories they are told. Every single red flag, no matter how small, is carefully collected and filed away in their mental archive. The controller relies entirely on creating a fog of confusion. They need their victim to feel unmoored and uncertain, but the empath refuses to stay in the fog. Instead of panicking, they take a deliberate step back. They begin to review past conversations with the precision of a forensic investigator. They test the waters silently, offering less information, and watching how the controller reacts to the sudden lack of emotional supply. This level of self-trust is profoundly dangerous to anyone attempting mind control. You simply cannot manipulate a person who can see the end of your game before you have even made your second move. Once the threat is clearly identified, the entire dynamic shifts. The empath does not explode in a fit of rage. They do not throw accusations or attempt to change the nature of the manipulator. They know that arguing with a controller is like trying to extinguish a fire by pouring gasoline on it. Instead, they activate their second protocol of defense. They build an invisible, impenetrable wall. This is the art of setting firm, immovable boundaries. For someone who naturally loves to give and accommodate, drawing a hard line in the sand requires immense emotional labor. But survival demands it. Their innate kindness undergoes a miraculous transformation into cold, quiet strength. They stop offering explanations for their choices. They stop justifying their existence. They reclaim their mental territory by strictly controlling who is allowed to enter it. The implementation of these boundaries is a masterclass in subtle power. If the manipulator demands a piece of their soul, asks an invasive question, or tries to force an emotional reaction, the empath simply says no. They deliver this refusal calmly, steadily, and without a single ounce of apology. They might say that a certain topic is no longer up for discussion. They might simply state that they are unavailable. The controller, accustomed to easy compliance, is immediately thrown off balance. They will often push back, feigning injury or accusing the empath of being cold and overly sensitive. But these old tricks no longer hold any magic. The empath observes the tantrum from a place of supreme self-respect. They recognize that the controller's frustration is merely the sound of a parasite being separated from its host. The emotional door that the manipulator once walked through so freely is now heavily padlocked. However, dismantling psychological manipulation is a heavy burden, and the controller will inevitably attempt a tactic known as gaslighting. They will try to convince the empath that their memories are false, that their feelings are irrational, and that they are losing their grip on reality. To combat this deeply toxic poison, the empath initiates their third strategy. They step out of their natural isolation to seek external validation. While they are incredibly private people, they possess a carefully chosen inner circle of profound trust. It might be a lifelong friend, a wise mentor, or a professional therapist. They bring their heavy, tangled thoughts into the light. They lay out the facts, the conversations, and the creeping doubts. They allow someone who truly loves them to look at the situation objectively. The power of an objective, loving voice cannot be overstated. When a trusted confidant listens and simply says, "That is not normal," or "You do not deserve to be treated that way," the spell of the manipulator is broken instantly. The fog lifts. The empath's internal compass, temporarily spun off course by the magnetic interference of the controller, points true north once again. Beyond seeking human counsel, they turn to their greatest love, which is knowledge. They will read extensively about psychology, dark personality traits, and emotional abuse. They arm themselves with vocabulary and clinical definitions. When they realize that the manipulator's behavior is just a predictable textbook pattern, the fear evaporates. The monster in the closet is revealed to be nothing more than a small, insecure person pulling levers behind a curtain. Armed with validation and education, the empath's certainty is fully restored, and the controller's influence is completely eradicated. As the empath's mind becomes clear, they must neutralize the manipulator's primary weapon, which is emotion. Controllers feed on dramatic reactions. They thrive on causing pain, sparking anger, or inducing desperate apologies. To starve the controller, the empath masters the fourth defense, known as emotional detachment. This is not an act of cruelty, nor is it a loss of their innate compassion. It is a highly tactical maneuver. They visualize their emotions as a precious resource, and they simply cut the supply line. When the manipulator launches a verbal attack designed to wound, the empath receives the words as if they are watching a boring movie in a foreign language. They hear the sound, but they refuse to internalize the meaning. They step outside of the interaction and observe the manipulator with clinical, almost scientific curiosity. The manipulator might say terrible things, attempting to strike at the empath's deepest insecurities. In the past, this might have triggered a desperate need to explain, to fix, or to cry. Now, the empath offers nothing but a blank stare and a calm silence. They separate the emotional performance from the cold facts. They recognize that the manipulator's anger belongs entirely to the manipulator. It is not their burden to carry. By withholding the expected emotional reaction, the empath fundamentally breaks the psychological loop. The controller throws a punch in the dark and hits nothing but air. Exhausted and deprived of their emotional nourishment, the controller is left powerless. The empath preserves their energy, keeping their inner ocean completely still, regardless of the storm raging on the shore. With the emotional tether severed, the empath begins the fifth phase of their liberation. It is a beautiful, quiet process called strategic disengagement. They do not announce their departure. They do not write a dramatic farewell letter. They simply begin to fade away like a ghost in the morning light. They reply to messages hours, then days later. Their responses become polite, brief, and entirely devoid of personal detail. If the controller tries to initiate a deep conversation, the empath redirects the topic to something utterly mundane, like the weather or a recent news event. They remove all the color and depth from the relationship, offering only a flat, gray surface. This slow withdrawal is incredibly strategic. It allows the empath to reclaim their physical and mental space without triggering an explosive, dangerous reaction from the controller. During this period of the slow fade, the empath engages in deep self-reflection. Stripped of the manipulator's noisy influence, they reconnect with their core identity. They remember the dreams they had before the confusion started. They recall the peaceful rhythm of their own life. Every hour spent away from the controller is an hour spent rebuilding the walls of their inner fortress. The manipulator, sensing the loss of grip, may suddenly panic. They might try to act excessively sweet, offer grandiose promises, or play the victim to reel the empath back in. But it is far too late. The empath's mind is already miles away. They watch the manipulator's desperate performance with mild pity, but the emotional bond is irreversibly broken. The slow retreat was a silent warning, and the manipulator failed to heed it. Finally, if the manipulator continues to push, refusing to respect the silence and persistently attempting to violate the boundaries, the empath will execute their ultimate and most definitive maneuver. It is a psychological phenomenon so absolute that it has earned a title of its own. It is the door slam. This is not a tantrum. It is not a negotiation tactic. It is the complete, permanent eradication of a person from the empath's reality. The empath has analyzed the situation from every possible angle. They have offered grace, they have given second chances, and they have waited for change. When the final realization dawns that the manipulator is a malignant force Incapable of respecting their peace, the heavy iron gate falls. There is no fanfare. There is no final argument. The execution is swift and silent. In an instant, the manipulator's access is revoked across all dimensions of existence. Phone numbers are blocked. Social media connections are severed. Shared physical spaces are abandoned. If the empath is forced to occupy the same room as the controller, they will look through them as if they are staring at empty air. For a controller, who bases their entire identity on their ability to influence others, this total loss of access is devastating. They are left screaming into a void. They often believe that time will heal the wound, that eventually the empath will soften and open the door just a crack. But they fundamentally misunderstand the nature of the door slam. It is an act of self-preservation so deep that it rewrites the empath's internal code. To the empath, the abuser simply ceases to exist. In the profound silence that follows, the empath does not harbor bitterness. They do not plot revenge, nor do they spend their days speaking ill of the person who tried to break them. They have cleansed their sanctuary, and they are entirely focused on breathing the fresh air of their reclaimed freedom. They have learned a priceless lesson about the value of their own mind. They realize that their empathy is a beautiful gift, but it must be protected by the armor of fierce discernment. They stand taller, deeply rooted in their truth, knowing that they possess the quiet strength to defeat any force that attempts to subjugate their spirit. The mind of an empath is a sacred territory. It is a place of peace, imagination, and profound love, and it is fiercely defended. The journey from being targeted by manipulation to reclaiming absolute mental sovereignty is one of the most magnificent transformations a human being can undergo. It proves that the quietest people often possess the most deafening strength. If you possess this kind of mind, remember that you are the architect of your own peace. You owe no one the keys to your inner fortress. Let your intuition guide you. Let your boundaries protect you, and let your profound inner light shine only on those who truly respect its warmth. May you walk through life with unshakable grace, guarding your spirit with quiet courage, and experiencing the deep, enduring peace that you so richly deserve.